As the average global climate continues to rise, climate change is one of the most important topics discussed today. What is the world doing to address global warming, and how have the increasing temperatures affected our state? I'm Rana Kamal. This is Our Issues, Twin Cities.
The green spaces are a place that we can go and connect to our families. We can come out here, we can get exercise, calm our spirit. Folks can, go fishing. There's that connection between human beings and Mother Earth.
For Karen Monahan of Sierra Club, Minnesota, providing green spaces promotes exploring parks and natural areas without cars. Why are they essential in providing a more sustainable community?
We are part of Mother Earth. Green space is huge. To have that, to get out, to enjoy nature, have trees that we know help clean up our air. There's a lot of studies that show mentally to get out into green space and get out into nature. It helps with focus, it helps with better sleep, it helps with exercise, being able to get out there. And there's just something about green space and getting out into nature that calms the spirit. And so we have to make sure that people have access to that.
Sierra Club Minnesota is a leading grassroots organization working to preserve Minnesota's environment. What is Sierra Club Minnesota's main focus in combating climate change?
Sierra Club's main focus is reducing our dependence on fossil fuels and investing in a clean energy economy like solar and wind. Fossil fuels contribute large amounts of carbon into our atmosphere, along with other pollutants as well. And so we're working to create a clean energy economy where we can, take the sun and use that. It's a renewable resource for our energy, or wind, and make that like the #1 use of energy source here in Minnesota.
The world's temperature has been rising almost 1/3 of a degree per decade since 1970, with carbon dioxide in the atmosphere as the main driver of this change. 6 of the top warmest years worldwide on record have occurred since 2005.
Across the world, averaged out higher temperatures. It means more humidity in the air, but it also means a lot of very specific impacts, again, at the local level.
Ellen leads the University of Minnesota's Energy Transition Lab, where they strive to develop new energy policy pathways. What is the Energy Transition Lab's main focus in response to climate change?
I'm working with some cities on trying to find city solutions to climate change and help support that work. And I'm working a lot on energy storage, which is one of the big emerging technologies. You've all heard about the Tesla and the batteries. Yeah. That's one part of energy storage. There's lots of other ways to store energy, but it's kind of a game changer because you can change, if you can have lots of wind energy and lots of solar energy, and you have energy storage, you can really make those work even better, and you can get to 100% renewable energy systems and make our grid, our modern electricity grid, more efficient and waste less energy as well.
2015 was the warmest year globally on record since the late 1800s, and Minnesota has certainly felt the effects of climate change as the average temperature has risen 2 degrees in the past century.
Winters, we're also seeing our major thunderstorms are more intense. And for a city like Minneapolis, this is a big deal because we have so much pervious surfaces.
Gail is the director of Minneapolis Climate Action Plan. How has the climate change affected Minnesota?
You're right that it's just overwhelming. Well, just think about the last 4 months. We had Christmas with no snow here. The last 4 months have been some of the warmest on records. I know in the U.S., over the last 19 years, they've been the warmest compared on average to the 20th century. So in Minnesota, we're seeing warmer winters.
Is the climate change in Minnesota here to stay?
Oh, absolutely. Climate's always going to be changing, and we've got to get over that. Just think about things like emerald ash borer, this disease, this bug that's coming in and killing all of our ash trees in this state. 50 years ago, a few cold winters and those insects wouldn't have moved in here, but now we have to worry about that because of our warmer winters.
More extreme storms, more extreme droughts, and more extreme temperatures, more humidity and high dew points in the Midwest. The question is, can we reverse it? And it's going to take a long time to reverse it because a lot of these emissions stay in the air for a very long time. They stay in the atmosphere for a long time, and it takes a long time to reduce them. So the sooner we cut those emissions, the sooner we start to decarbonize our economy in a serious way, the more realistic we have a chance for my children and yours and the next generation and the generation after that to have a world that resembles the quality of life that we enjoy with in our natural world.
Humans are major contributors to our changing climate by releasing billions of tons of carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases into the atmosphere every year.
Human beings have overwhelmingly in the last century been the major contributor to greenhouse gas emissions and the vast increases. And it's basically because of our use of fossil fuels, things like gas, oil, and coal.
Launched in 2013, the Minneapolis Climate Action Plan aims to reduce our city's climate impact. How important is this plan for the city of Minneapolis in order to tackle this global issue on a local level?
You always have to have a plan and then you work the plan, don't you? So it's a pretty important thing. After the Climate Action Plan, we really started looking at a relationship with Xcel Energy. They provide electricity to the whole city, and CenterPoint Energy, they're our natural gas, our heating provider. And we started looking at that relationship because buildings are 60% of our carbon emissions in the city, so we know that's an important sector. And we worked out what we call the Clean Energy Partnership. It's a brand new, innovative, one of the kind in the nation kind of partnership with our utilities where they've committed to helping us reach our climate goals. So together, along with the community, we've come up with more plans that are much more strategic of saying, we wanted to have clean, affordable, reliable energy.
When we return, how climate change has affected the increase of Lyme disease. Shannon is a mother of two, hoping each day will be better than the last.
Debilitates people. I'm very thankful that even on my bad day, I'm still able to walk. Where this disease has put people in a wheelchair.
Living with Lyme disease, Shannon was first diagnosed 5 years ago.
How has it been living with Lyme disease?
Every day is very different. Today could be something completely different than yesterday. I have a lot of brain fog. I've had a lot of nerve and muscle damage in my arm. Some days I don't leave the house, get out of bed, very lethargic, headaches, sore throats. But I think one of my biggest struggles is the cognitive deficits, where you forget how to do certain things each day, like paying at the pump, or and it's not something that where if you lose your car keys, you can go backtrack and say, I was here, I was there. You have no recollection of that at any time.
In recent years, Lyme disease has soared in Minnesota. From 1996 to 2005, an average of 464 cases were reported yearly. From 2006 to 2004, that number increased to an average of 1,064 Lyme disease registered patients per year.
Do you think that Lyme's has anything to do with the correlation of climate change?
I do think that is very, very highly, because the warmer the climate and the longer it is, and with all these new co-infections coming out, I think there is something to, the stuff with the climate change. We have longer summers, shorter winters.
We have 6 field facilities that we're out doing sampling. We have small mammal traps that we collect mice and other creatures in, process out of the field facility, and then they come into our office, and we have staff here that will come in and look at each one of the mammals individually under this hood, and we'll examine them for ticks.
Infectious disease expert Janet Garnfield at the Metropolitan Mosquito Control District works to protect the public from diseases spread by mosquitoes and ticks.
Minnesota has felt the effects of climate change, especially in the last decade. How have the rising temperatures affected our mosquito and tick population?
A lot of times rising temperatures have something to do with how well creatures do. Different kinds of creatures will respond to hot, dry weather by dying. Some will respond to, warmer, wetter conditions by thriving. And so when you have long-term changes in climate, you're going to see long-term changes in the populations of a variety of insects and also ticks.
Mike is the communications director at the Metropolitan Mosquito Control District.
The increase of the tick population has also led to the increase of Lyme disease. First of all, how has that affected Minnesotans?
Minnesota's got a lot of different habitats. We have wooded habitats, we have kind of pine forested habitats, we have prairie habitats. A lot of times the ticks that spread Lyme disease do well in a particular kind of habitat. They like that hardwood forest, that underbrush, that they don't do so well in prairie areas. As those ranges of some of those plants and some of those environments that they do well in, as those expand, the ticks themselves expand. They can expand their range. They can expand the places where people find them, where people intersect with them. Mm-hmm. So places that you didn't ordinarily find ticks 20, 30 years ago, you might start seeing them more regularly now. And it has to do with long-term changes in the climate and in the environment that brings.
Minnesota is home to 16 different species of ticks, including the deer tick carrying diseases, most notably Lyme disease. Symptoms of Lyme disease are marked by fatigue, fever, and muscle aches.
Lyme disease is, you feel really lousy for a while, and then you kind of get over it. And what happens then is as the bacterium works its way into the deep tissues, it can cause some really serious after effects.
Along with Lyme disease, there are over a dozen known tick-borne illnesses that affect humans.
Second most common disease in Minnesota is human anaplasmosis, and actually in the whole United States, Minnesota and Wisconsin is a hot spot for that particular disease. Both Lyme and anaplasmosis, you're going to start with a really severe flu-like illness. Lyme disease, you may also get a rash. Human anaplasmosis doesn't have a rash associated with it, but you just start feeling sicker and sicker to the point where you're going to want to seek a physician's help.
Why has there been an increase in tick-borne illnesses altogether?
First of all, the ticks themselves seem to be more abundant and are found in places where they weren't ordinarily found as the range changes. So it really has to do with just people are being exposed to ticks more now than they used to be.
The highest risk for tick diseases are from mid-May through mid-July. However, state officials warn that deer ticks are active again in the late fall.
There has been an increase. How do you guys expect this affecting Minnesota in the future?
People are going to have to be more aware of it than they had been in the past. A lot of times, especially in some of those prairie areas and things, you didn't have to really think about that much when you were out camping, out hunting, doing the things that we like to do in our short summer months. Mm-hmm. Now you do need to be a little bit more aware of that than you used to have to be.
So definitely take precautionary measures always when you're outside.
That's right, and for longer periods of time too. We used to kind of get the messages out there in the springtime because that's really when the ticks were out in force. But we'll see ticks pretty much all summer long, really up until the ground gets to be about 40 degrees. You still have to think about ticks. So if you're out in the woods in your deer stand, or if you're out in hunting especially, even late in the fall, if the ground is warm, the ticks could be questing, and so you still have to pay attention to it.
A lot of people will do something like put their socks outside their pants. That in itself is a very effective technique because the ticks are going to be crawling up your pants and not finding your skin to be able to attach.
Today, Shannon shares her story to raise awareness towards tick-borne illnesses in hopes of minimizing the numbers of diagnoses every year.
Your whole way of life it changes, and it changes who you are, and but I think the biggest thing is not to give up hope.
Up next on Our Issues Twin Cities, the recent historic climate deal reached in Paris.
General, fellow leaders, we have come to Paris to show our resolve.
History was made late last year when the world gathered in Paris to address the importance of climate change. In a landmark agreement, nations around the globe commit to reducing greenhouse gas emissions to stave off the drastic effects of climate change.
It was a pretty amazing conference. As you say, 196 countries coming to an agreement, recognizing that we have a very, very serious problem here with climate change and with warming, and that if we don't act as globally, that we're going to be seeing negative effects from this that are going to cause incredible dislocation, climate refugees, and our Defense Department says this is our #1 security issue right now in the world is climate change. It was very inspiring to see 196 countries come together. We also went at one point to the city hall there, and they had mayors from all over the world, including from Minnesota.
This was the COP21, which means the Conference of the Parties, the 21st time, the 21st meeting of all these countries of the world coming together to try to reach an agreement on climate change. And it took those at least 20 years for that to happen. Everybody was at the table, and there was responsibility to a certain extent for every single country, #1. #2, it was done in a bottom-up way. So instead of saying, okay, world leaders, here's what you have to agree to do. Everyone has to agree to cut your carbon emissions by such and such a percent. It's not like that at all. Instead, each country decided what they could each do. Politically, what was possible in their own country, and legally and economically, what was viable in their own country, and then submit those plans together. And then the agreement that was signed in Paris is all about cementing that together and holding each other accountable for those country commitments.
We have to continue on the path of reducing the CO2 that we emit. We've had a clean power plan in terms of our utilities and what we have to do that the EPA has put together, and that I feel is a good plan, and Minnesota is going to be able to meet their goals, and we want the rest of the country to do that too. We need to be a leader in this. This is a global problem, and we need the entire world involved in this, but unless we lead, we're the essential country in the world. Unless we lead, this isn't going to happen.
As important as climate change is, how is it linked to the importance of global peace and stability?
When we hear so much about migration and refugees right now, and we know there's countries of the world that are very unstable, and they're facing a lot of conflicts and violence, and some of it is about resources, and some of it is made worse by climate change. Water shortages, food shortages, disruptive weather that causes flooding and other things have caused people to leave their homes. And so having people have stable places to live is a critical part of adapting to climate change. And so you can't really solve those problems. You can't make sure that you protect people and enable them to be able to build more resilient homes and communities. You can't do that unless you work together as nations.
Today we're here to announce America's Clean Power Plan, a plan 2 years in the making, and the single most important step America has ever taken in the fight against global climate change.
Taking climate change into action, President Barack Obama introduced the Clean Power Plan to reduce carbon pollution from power plants in 2015. In support of the president's motion, Minneapolis has joined a legal motion in support of the plan.
For Minneapolis, it's really important because you know what? 2 months after that plan was announced, Xcel Energy said, you know what? We're going to transition to coal a lot faster than what we previously thought, and we're going to do it by 2030, and we're going to reduce our carbon emissions by 60%. If that Clean Power Plan hadn't been in place, I'm not so sure that they would have done that fast. So it's really important that that remain a strong plan. So that's why the city of Minneapolis, along with a lot of other cities, the National League of Cities, other states, want to defend that plan.
I've been doing a lot in terms of energy efficiency. I started an initiative in Minnesota to retrofit a lot of buildings. You know, buildings use about 40% of our energy, and if we can reduce the amount of energy that a building uses, there's ways to do that, and the ways to do that which they're more efficient, they use renewable energy, and very importantly, create jobs. We're about to have an energy bill marked up or debated on the floor of the Senate, and I have a bill to have the entire country adopt what Minnesota did back in 2007, which is an energy efficiency standard. Minnesota has done that. It's been incredibly successful, and 24 states do it now. I want all of the United States to do it, because what we've seen in those 24 states is every state has met its goals and more.
Thank you for joining me this week on Our Issues Twin Cities. I'm Rana Kamal. See you next time.